We often think about election integrity, around voting day itself, secure ballots, accurate counts, that sort of thing. But what if the real foundation for a fair election gets laid, well, much earlier? Maybe even in that seemingly simple step where a candidate just declares they want to run.
That's absolutely right. Filing a certificate of candidacy, the COC, it sounds straightforward, but it's such a critical first step. And the Commission on Elections, COMELEC, they're really the ones working behind the scenes to make sure this initial step is solid.
Okay, right, COMELEC. We hear the name, especially around election time, but maybe don't always grasp just how involved they are with these COCs. So today, let's really dive deep into that. What are COMELEC's specific duties, their powers when it comes to these candidacy forms? It's like understanding how the whole playing field is set up before the game even starts.
Precisely. And what we're looking at here is based on COMELEC's established responsibilities. Things outlined in the Constitution, various laws, their own rules and regulations. It's all geared towards building a system that's fair, that's legitimate, right from the get-go.
So, if you're listening and you've ever been curious about, well, the mechanics of an election, or maybe you've even thought about running yourself someday, understanding what COMELEC does here is pretty crucial. We'll try to cut through some of the jargon and focus on the really impactful parts. Let's start at the beginning. How does COMELEC even set the rules for this whole thing?
Okay, yeah. That really starts with their rule-making authority. The Constitution itself, plus election laws, they give COMELEC the power to create the specific regulations for how COCs are filed. And these aren't just minor details, They form the basic structure for anyone wanting to run.
Right. Can you give us some, concrete examples? What kind of rules are we talking about?
Sure. Well, first off, COMELEC dictates the exact form and content of the COC. It's not a free-for-all. They require specific information, the candidate's full name, address, age, citizenship, definitely the office they're seeking. It ensures everyone provides the same basic essential data.
Okay, that makes sense. Like any formal application, really. There are fields you just have to fill in. What else?
Another big one is setting the specific period for filing. It's not open-ended. COMELEC establishes clear start and end dates, a defined window. And generally, if you miss that window, you're out of luck.
No latecomers allowed, usually.
Usually, yeah. Though COMELEC does have some leeway to consider, really valid reasons for a delay in very specific, rare cases. But the deadline is there to keep things orderly, prevent last-minute chaos.
Okay, so a strict deadline, maybe a tiny bit of wiggle room for emergencies. And what gives them the legal power to make these rules?
The main source is the Constitution, Article IXC, Section 3. It basically says COMELEC can make its own rules to ensure elections are free, orderly, honest, peaceful, credible, all of that. And then you have laws like the amended Automated Election Law and Republic Act 9369 and the Omnibus Election Code, Batas Pambansa 881. They provide more detailed legislative backing.
Got it. So COMELEC sets the stage. Now, once a candidate actually submits their COC within that time frame, what happens?
Right, so that moves us into the receiving and processing stage. COMELEC's job is first to accept these COCs during the filing period. But it's not just about collecting paper. They then have to carefully examine each one, assess its validity.
Examine. So they're actively reviewing it, not just stamping it received. What does that look like?
It involves verification and validation. Checking if the candidate actually meets the basic legal qualifications for the office they want. Things like minimum age, residency requirements, how long they've lived somewhere, Filipino citizenship. And they also check if the form itself is filled out correctly, properly notarized, and if all the required attachments, like documents proving those qualifications, are there.
I see. So they're like the first line of defense, ensuring anyone putting their name forward meets the absolute minimum legal requirements. What's the legal basis for that scrutiny?
Again, the Constitution, Article IXC, Section 2.1, says COMELEC has to enforce all election laws, and Section 73 of the Omnibus Election Code specifically details what needs to be in the COC. So naturally, COMELEC has to check if those requirements have actually been met.
Okay, now moving beyond just those basic qualifications on the form, I know COMELEC also looks into reasons why someone might actually be disqualified, right? This seems like where they really start safeguarding the process.
It definitely does. COMELEC has the authority to dig deeper, to investigate a candidate's overall eligibility. And importantly, this includes the power to conduct investigations motu proprio.
Motu proprio, that sounds significant. What does that mean in practice?
It just means they can act on their own initiative. If they get credible information or something just looks off during their review, they don't need to wait for someone else to file a formal complaint. They can start looking into a potential issue themselves. Without that power, well, Some problems might just slip through if nobody formally complains.
So they can be proactive. Okay. What kind of issues could actually lead COMELEC to, say, cancel a COC?
A major one is material misrepresentation. Basically, lying on the form about something important, like your citizenship, your age, maybe your residency details. Section 78 of the Omnibus Election Code covers this specifically. Another reason, maybe less common but still there, is failing to file your statement of contributions and expenditures, your SOC, from a previous election you ran in. Not being transparent about past campaign finances can block you.
So cancellation seems tied more to the form itself, the information provided.
Often, yes. It's about the truthfulness and completeness of the COC document.
Then what about outright disqualification? Are the grounds different there? Maybe more serious?
Yes, disqualification usually involves more substantive issues. Things like being convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude.
Moral turpitude, like actions showing a real lack of integrity.
Exactly. Things that might make the public question someone's fitness for office. Or conviction for any offense where the penalty is more than 18 months in prison. And then there are violations of election laws themselves. Things like vote buying, spending way over the campaign limits, election violence. Section 12 of the Omnibus Code lists these. These are serious offenses against the electoral process itself.
Right, so it ensures a certain baseline of legal and ethical conduct for candidates. Seems vital. Okay, so there are consequences for both fudging the form and for more serious breaches. After COMELEC goes through all these checks, what's next? How do we, the public, find out who actually made the cut?
That brings us to publishing the certified list of candidates, and also dealing with so-called nuisance candidates. COMELEC has to prepare this official list and make it public. It's not just for their internal files, it's key information for voters.
How do they get that list out there?
Well, they post it in public places, publish it in newspapers with wide circulation, and very importantly these days, they put it up on the COMELEC website. So for you, as a voter, checking that list is often the first step to see who's officially running and maybe start doing your homework on them.
Transparency is definitely key there. Now, you mentioned nuisance candidates. That term pops up a lot. What exactly makes someone a nuisance candidate in COMELEC's view, and what can they do about it?
Right. COMELEC has the power to identify and actually exclude people they determine are nuisance candidates. The criteria, found in Section 69 of the Omnibus Election Code, generally cover a couple of things. One is filing a COC just to mock the process or maybe to confuse voters, cause disruption. Another big factor is showing no genuine intention to actually run. This might be obvious if they, have absolutely no capacity to mount any kind of campaign for the office they claim to be seeking.
I see. So it's really about filtering out those who aren't serious, who might just be trying to clutter the ballot or undermine the election somehow?
Exactly. It helps maintain the seriousness and focus of the electoral contest.
Okay, so after all these reviews, potential cancellations, dealing with nuisance candidates, what if there are still disputes? Someone challenges a candidacy.
That's where COMELEC puts on his quasi-judicial hat. They function almost like a court for these specific election matters. They hear and decide on petitions related to COCs. This includes cases asking to cancel a COC for that material misrepresentation we talked about, or petitions seeking to disqualify a candidate on legal grounds. And these cases can be started by COMELEC itself, acting motu proprio, or by other people filing formal petitions.
So they hold hearings, weigh evidence.
Pretty much, yes. COMELEC, either through its divisions or sometimes the full commission, the en banc for major cases, conducts hearings. They look at the evidence presented, hear arguments from all sides, and then they make a ruling. The idea is to resolve these disputes relatively quickly, ideally well before Election Day.
Makes sense. And if a candidate or petitioner doesn't agree with COMELEC's decision, is there an appeal process?
Oh, definitely. Under the rules of court, specifically Rule 64, decisions from COMELEC in these kinds of cases can be appealed directly to the Supreme Court. So there's that final layer of judicial review available. It ensures there's a definitive legal resolution. The basis for this adjudicatory role is in the Omnibus Election Code, COMELEC's own rules of procedure, and the Constitution itself.
We've covered a lot about COMELEC's powers. What about their duty to make sure this whole COC filing process is, open and accessible?
Yeah, ensuring transparency and public access is fundamental. COMELEC is required to make sure the whole filing process is conducted openly. This absolutely includes letting the public access the information candidates put in their COCs, qualifications, background, other required details. That transparency helps voters make informed choices.
And practically speaking, for the candidates themselves, how does COMELEC make filing accessible?
Well, they also play a key role in just making sure people file in the right place. It sounds simple, but it matters. For local jobs, governor, mayor, councilor, you file at the specific regional, provincial, or city COMELEC office. For national positions, president, VP, senator, you have to go to the main COMELEC office in Manila. Having these clear guidelines just helps streamline everything, both for the candidates and for COMELEC's own administration. The legal backing comes from the Omnibus Election Code and the constitutional mandate for transparency and proper administration.
Okay, now what happens if someone files their COC and then changes their mind? Can they withdraw? And what about replacing candidates?
Yes, there are rules for both withdrawal and substitution, and COMELEC manages those too. A candidate can officially withdraw. They need to file a formal written notice with COMELEC, usually by a certain deadline.
Okay, and substitution. When can a party swap someone out?
Substitution is pretty restricted. If a candidate withdraws before the deadline COMELEC sets for substitutions, their political party can usually nominate a replacement. But after that deadline, substitution is generally only allowed if the original candidate dies or becomes permanently incapacitated. And crucially, the substitute has to be from the same political party and, of course, meet all the qualifications for the office themselves. Section 77 of the Omnibus Election Code lays all this out.
Right. Sounds like it's designed to prevent parties from just strategically swapping people in and out late in the game, which could confuse voters.
That's likely the intent, yes, to maintain stability in the candidate list closer to the election.
So, throughout this whole complex process, checking forms, investigating, handling disputes, withdrawals, does COMELEC do this all on its own, or do they work with other agencies?
Oh, coordination is absolutely vital. COMELEC definitely doesn't operate in a vacuum. They often need to work with other government bodies. For example, verifying citizenship might involve coordinating with the Bureau of Immigration or the Department of Foreign Affairs, especially if questions about dual citizenship come up. They also need to coordinate with courts and law enforcement agencies. Why? To get records about pending disqualification cases or any criminal convictions a candidate might have that could affect their eligibility.
I see.
So this collaboration across different agencies is really crucial to make sure the information COMELEC has about candidates is accurate and complete.
It's like they're cross-referencing everything, making sure the details add up.
Exactly. It ensures a more thorough vetting process.
So it's a much bigger effort than just COMELEC handling paperwork. It's really a network of agencies working together.
Precisely. It highlights how comprehensive the approach is, trying to safeguard the election's integrity right from that very first step of someone filing their candidacy.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. We've seen that COMELEC's role regarding these certificates of candidacy is, well, incredibly broad and really, really important. It goes way beyond just collecting forms. They set the rules, scrutinize qualifications, investigate potential issues, resolve disputes fairly, make sure the public knows who's running, and even handle withdrawals and substitutions. This whole initial stage, it's not just admin. It's clearly a foundational pillar for the integrity and legality of the entire election.
Absolutely. What looks like just filling out a form is backed by a serious legal framework and a lot of diligent work by COMELEC to enforce it. This meticulous groundwork, as you said, is essential for building and maintaining public trust in the whole electoral system.
So the next time you look at a ballot, maybe just take a second to think about all the work that happened long before that point. COMELEC setting the stage, checking the details, making sure the candidates listed actually meet the requirements according to the rules. It underscores this commitment to fairness and transparency. It really makes you think about all those unseen efforts, the complex machinery that underpins our democratic process, doesn't it? Long before any vote is even cast.